Hello, good morning, and happy Wednesday. Halfway through the week. Wait, is it Wednesday? Yes, it is. Time. Yeah, I used to have a wall calendar here that I would look at to sort of like remind me what day it was. Now I have to actually look at my watch or my phone or something, and then I constantly forget. Apparently, I don't even look at the thing up in the top left of the computer that tells me like, hey, it's that day. Uh, Probably because it's really dim here, and then I have lights in my eyes. I would probably explain that. Anyways, how are you doing today? I am doing pretty good. Sorry, I'm a couple minutes late. I got distracted by answering some YouTube comments. One of them was really interesting. Some feedback for giving like maybe a shorter form content, sort of like alongside the courses. So I'm trying to like think about what that means. Then I got distracted. And what it would mean for this channel. Diablo D3, hello. Yes, yeah, sure. I'm an icon here. I could put the little face icon down, and then I would be an icon everywhere. All right. So, what are we working on today? Let's see. Oh right, we're building out the we're doing a lesson on integration. Hold on, I've actually got it. I've actually got a list of what we're doing today. Well, these aren't in order. Hold on, I need to get rid of some of these. Review, get rid of you. Then you go there. So in doing, I was able to upload those other courses, I guess like the addendums, the like additional videos for the course last night. So now what we have is this adding Bootstrap to the project. So I need to record this. This is what it's going to end up looking like. We're going to have why use a CSS framework, the act of adding it in, which is pretty simple. Then using Bootstrap to create a new task form. So basically create this kind of stuff. Overview of ARIA, basically admit that ARIA is really important, even though I completely didn't think about it and forgot it in the main course and everything else, which is unfortunately, it's a habit. So I want to get it back into the habit of starting to use it, not just in professional projects, but in these ones too. So, let's see. And that'll be that. All right, so, stacking, hello. I need to, okay, so this is build, full stack framework, front end, Rust, Yew, lessons, Bootstrap. Yeah. And we have some files that we were taking a look at here. So, for example, in lib, we were creating these components here. That path is why people use Z or jump. I know. Well, and then I'm using Z shell with the ability to just like tab expand. So it's just like the first letter of each directory in there. But yeah, using something like Z or jump or creating an alias or or something like that would probably be better. I actually have a task in my backlog. This would be back in, let's see, write a script to set up Mac for live coding. So basically, what I would want here is like a button that either I could press on like a Stream Deck, or maybe like a keyboard shortcut command, or maybe just like a terminal command, and then it would like just do all the things. Open up VS Code, shut off some extra, applications, do something like that. It's basically like figure out all the pathing and everything else. That would be nice to set up. I don't know exactly what I want in there yet though. Okay, so with this one, you glued FCF into your bash. Complete does the job for you. If I remember, so FCF is a fuzzy search thing, right? I think I've only heard of FCF in the context of Vim though. So there's a bash autocomplete for it? Oh, that could be really cool. So then as you typing, is it like showing up in your terminal of like what you want to do? Is sort of like that light gray, and then as you could type over it or tab. That's cool. That does remind me, one of the things that I eventually want to do is set up Vim, or really like NeoVim for development. But let's also set up FCF, or try FCF. Try FCF for just like terminal. All right. So continuing on, we're gonna start with. Okay, we're gonna make this just an H1 tag and turn away from main, because we're gonna have like this class. We're gonna put in like class container, div class row. Okay, so we're right. So this is setting up all of that stuff. Okay, so this is just gonna be a hello world. What? Philby, hi. I didn't open one of the windows he likes to go hang out at, because there was a spider on the it was on the outside, but it was on the screen, and I was sort of like, there's those little holes that you can get in there, and I didn't want it to like get in, and then just like Zilby would be playing / torturing it. Hi. Let's see if you can. Sylvie, hi. Want to come here? No? Okay, so let's see. So we have you. Text field we're going to delete, which means we don't mod you anymore. Index. Oh, right. This also we delete. So we don't have this script, and we don't have this here. So we're just going to start with a hello world. That was okay. Soapy's doing his jump off the walls to get attention thing that he does. Instead of coming in, I even put a box down for him to jump in, which he does jump in sometimes when I'm not streaming. So I do wonder if it's because I have the mic down in this position and he kind of freaks out about that, or the lights on. That might be too bright for him. Okay, so we'll start with this. Now, other things to look into. I literally have this open over there. I didn't need to go to it there. All right, so why use a CSS framework? So that'll be just us discussing things, adding Bootstrap to the project. So go to Bootstrap, start. Okay, so we'll go to Bootstrap. Make sure that we're on the latest. Yep, okay. Let's see. Using Bootstrap to create the new task form. So we're going to create a title and a description. We're going to do a quick overview of ARIA and how that works. I should... So, using ARIA, with web dev, better, inclusive web apps. I should actually just make that a thing. Okay, and then break out title into its own component. And then I think that will be done. There's really not much more that goes into that. So my plan is to open this up. Over here on the right, so I can see my checklist. And I'll sort of like follow along and use that. We can get nice and big over here. And all right, I think we're about ready to get started with this. Oh, there is one more thing, which would be, what am I calling this? I think it's like Bootstrap CSS. So Bootstrap CSS. All right, got that all nice and centered. Main is like this. That's all good. Oh, we don't want. Do not want cat cam up for that. Okay. Okay. Here we go. Sometimes when we're building our web apps, we don't want to have to create all of the CSS ourselves from scratch and include it in our components. And even if we were creating some kind of a separate library or component, UI crate for ourselves, it can be really just nice to have something to help us out. Now, Bootstrap is something that comes to mind because it was one of the first super popular CSS frameworks that was out there. And it really helped a lot with getting web accessibility in place, and also just having people just be able to build sites a lot easier and faster. And while there are some negatives with using something like Bootstrap, aka our sites kind of start looking similar to each other, there are workarounds for that. We're not going to be going into those specifically in this video lesson, but rather, how can we integrate and use something like Bootstrap in our apps? Because with Bootstrap, we can very easily, very quickly make our apps look a lot better than maybe we could just do it on our own. Plus, they'll work on every browser exactly the same, which is also a bonus. So let's go ahead and get ourselves started here and add a Bootstrap to our project. I've gone ahead and created a hello world here. This is just running in. Where's my mouse? There's my mouse. It is just running in this basic HTML, and our hello world is really just our lib.rs with an h1 hello world. So really ready to go. All right. So first of all, make sure that we're on the latest release here. If you accidentally get like version 3 or something, it's going to require you to have jQuery, which is not something that we need here. And then we're going to want to go into the download section and go to the CDN section for that. I'm going to grab both of these links. Copy that. Come back to our index.html. This document does not get completely blown away and overwritten every time that we're using our app. It's trunk is nice enough to sort of like to add in extra things, but not sort of destroy anything that's in here. So this is how we're actually integrating and adding in Bootstrap. And I'm going to move the script to the bottom of the body tag so it doesn't load up right away. Okay, so that's great. If we go ahead and save, we should already have things slightly different. The text is just a little bit different. Now, if you can't tell any differences, one way to verify is in your browser of choice. We can come to whatever style editor or a CSS and just notice and see that it is loading up these Bootstrap classes. And here it's debugger, but I think it's sources in Chrome. I can actually see under our CDN, it has loaded up Bootstrap stuff here. So that's how we can actually tell that, yes, this is loading up and working, and I don't have any network errors yelling at me. All right, so that's that. Let's go ahead and use this to create some components. I'm thinking we'll create like the first part of the new task form. So let's start with come back to here. Let's start with creating just our title, which is, create a new task. So instead of h1 here, I'm going to use just main and main. Now, if you're not familiar with Bootstrap, they use a lot. Basically, you interface with it through classes. Mainly, they have created a bunch of classes that you can use that then do lots of styling stuff. So one big part of Bootstrap is sort of the grid system. And I don't necessarily mean CSS grid, although it can include that in the more modern versions of Bootstrap. So in this case, if I want to say class equals container, and then inside of here, we're going to have a row. So we're going to use a div class equals row. And then inside of this, we're going to have another div, and this is going to be a single column. class equals. Now, if we want to go and take a look at how this works, we can see the grid system here. So if I have each of these are like 3 columns next to each other. So we have div class row, div class call, and then whatever our data is inside of there, and it's going to break it up smartly, intelligently. So we can have div class call. And then finally, we can put in what we're interested in having here. So this would be our h1 tag, which is going to have our new course. No, new course, new task. This, you notice it does give us a little bit of margin on the left. So that's what that container is doing. There's only one row here and one column, but we want this to be centered. So there are some helper classes that Bootstrap gives us. And I think a lot of them are in either typography or like down in like utilities. There's like text. I want center to line on all viewport sizes. And so we can see here that is class text dash center. So let's add that in here. We'll save you, and there we are. We're now centered. We have that centered. Okay, so next up, let's go into form stuff, because that's the next sort of like biggest thing that you might use with a framework. So we're going to start with the same idea. We're going to have a div class equals row. I'm actually thinking of maybe making this more of a section, because this is going to be a section for the entire form. Okay, then now section, like section tags and divs, there's not really much of a difference rendering wise. It's more semantically letting me know that this is like a completely different section of something going on in here. Okay, so we have our form. I'm going to want a form tag for this. We can actually go take a look at some examples in Bootstrap for what this looks like. We're going to start with the title of the task. So that would be something like an email address, but make it text instead of an email. We can see here that they just use like this div class MB3. I can just use a row. They have a label and an input for that. So we can see the label and the input. Okay, so let's grab this out. I'm just going to copy, and actually I want the text area too, don't I? So I'm going to copy you completely. Come back to our code, and we do need to have a form. Bring in all of you. Okay, you stay back. Okay, so inside of this, we'll have class row. Let's make this a class call. So it's just like the full width of the column. Close the div out here. Same thing for you. Okay, you'll be another column. Okay, label 4. Let's see. Oh, this is, yeah, closing div here. This is really a section. There are some times where the browser will just sort of help you, and sometimes it won't. So it can be good to sort of like look through that. Another sort of like it's a problem, I would say, but it's one that we sort of have to accept if we're doing Rust code with integrated HTML. Is our editors aren't yet aware of HTML in Rust, and so we're not going to get any help with this. We get like color helping kind of, but not really enough. So it's kind of on us to like keep an eye on this. All right, so in here we have label 4. This matches up with the ID here. Now, the reason why we want to have this is for inclusivity purposes. I want this label to be associated with this, so a screen reader would potentially then read out what the label says when we get there. And there's two choices here. If we don't want to have an ID, we could take this input and put it inside of the label instead of having this here. However, in this case, we're actually using the label as also like the text that's printed out to the screen. So therefore we don't want to like include the input inside of it. So let's change our IDs here. This is going to be our task title. Class is this form label, and then we're going to have our like what is the task the title. Let's actually just name it title. Then we close the label off there. Okay, that should be happy. Input. So this is a little bit unhappy for it with us. Let's fix this. So first of all, type is going to be text. Class is this form control. ID matches with the label. Placeholder. What do we want sort of like to start off displaying here? I want new, let's see, maybe like pick up groceries or something like that. And then I have to self-close this at the end because it is a self-closing tag. And that is our text input. Let's now take a look at our text area. It's very similar here. So we have our label. I want to now change this to be the task description. Class form label, Yew.rs. Let's see, this is going to be the, well, I guess, just description. Close our label off. Text area, class form control, ID, how many rows we want to have, and I don't have anything to start it off with, so this is going to be fine. Other than just adding in classes, there's nothing different than normal HTML. So anything else that you want to do, like setting the initial values, adding in click handlers, all of those work exactly as you would imagine that they would. Bootstrap really mostly just gives us classes, and that JavaScript is there for just some of their components. Need a little bit of extra JavaScript for animation purposes. You might be able to get away with not even including it if you don't use too much of it. All right, so we have our text area. We have this. Let's take a look to see what we got. So here's our title. We have that. We have our description. Okay, that's great. Let's talk about some of the more inclusive features though, because there's one section in here that shows the ARIA for screen reader purposes, and I want to go find it, and we'll include it in because this is something that I forget in my code. I forgot to put it into the course itself, so I think it's valuable to talk about it here. And I think Bootstrap sort of deserves this conversation because for a lot of people, ARIA, like they put the stuff in here. Like for example, this ARIA label, which is basically describing to a screen reader, what is this? Like ARIA label, default, select, what's actually happening here. So it reads that out properly. Uh, there is, I actually was looking through this before and I saw it and now I've lost it. One where it actually had the description. It wasn't this. Oh, here it is. Aria described by, and then we have this basic add-on 3. And so if we go find basic, where is basic add-on 3 is where? Let me copy. There it is. This span here. So this aria described by, notice that it gets put onto the input. So I'm going to copy you. We're going to come back to here on this input. We're going to bring this aria described by, and you're going to be a, let's do task title help. And then we're going to find this span here. And I'm going to put it afterwards. Okay, so class input group text. ID has to match this one. This is just like the for, so it links via the IDs. And this tells any screen readers to literally read out what is inside of here when a user using a screen reader has selected this this form field. So let's put in what like enter the task title. Enter task title. We can do the exact same thing for our text area. Okay, so this is going to be the task description help, and then enter task description. Okay, so we got that saved, and here we have this sort of like help thing down here. This is kind of annoying. We don't really need to see it though. So if we go back and we look at some utilities here for some text, maybe probably not display visibility here. So we can select the visibility of elements to make them invisible, but allow for screen readers to still see it. So we got that. Let's do invisible elements. Still take up elements, so we're gonna copy. Elements with the invisible class will be hidden both visually and for assistive technology screen reader users. Okay, so I don't want that. I want it to be invisible for us, but not invisible for screen readers. I thought I saw that. Visually hidden. Oh, this is it. Visually hidden under helpers. Hide an element while allowing it to be exposed to assistive technology, such as screen readers. So we're going to use this visually hidden class. So back to you for this span. I'm going to just add you in here, and with you, add you in there. That makes the that sort of like the help description go away, but it if we use a screen reader, it will still pick up and read out for us. So that's a really helpful way for us to like keep that in there. Now, remember that if you're not using Bootstrap, you can still use those ARIA commands. That's not a Bootstrap thing. That's just something they put in their documentation to sort of help a lot of people include in their apps by accident. Okay, so this is great. We've got some much better styling, much faster than doing this ourselves. But we also have like a lot of this code just sort of out here. What if we had multiple just text fields or multiple um, of these text areas? We would probably want to be including this in some kind of uh, uh, own component to share around and like be consistent with, setting up these aria classes. So let's go ahead and create a new file here, and we're going to break out I'll just break out this text field here, but the same idea works with anything from Bootstrap. So we'll do a text form field .rs. We'll come in here and we'll mod it. Use Yew, prelude, star, and we don't need to have a stylus component, so just a function component is fine for this. Text form field. Before I even create that, well, I'll create it first, then we'll go in and figure out what our props are going to be. So pub function, text form field. We're going to have props of some kind. Props is props. Going to have HTML returned. Okay. Properties. All right, so we're going to derive properties, partial equal, and clone. What are things that we need? Well, so maybe before we get into here, what I want to do is I want to return just a fragment that is going to be these things. Now, I don't want to return starting from here where we have the div column, because what if I want to have them be in a like different position? So I'm going to put them here just so this page component is in charge of their positioning. This just has like the label input and the span all together. So I'm going to cut this out and put this in here. To use a fragment, we just have some empty tags and throw you in here. All right, so we have our label for task title. Well, right away, I think I want to have an ID that we put for here. So we're going to have a pub ID, and that's going to be a string. This is absolutely required. So for this here, for is going to be props.id, and we do have to clone this. And that's going to be the same also for this ID here. Okay. Class form label, that's going to be fine. We actually want like the label, what is described here. So let's make this a label. So pub label is also a string. That's not optional. And you're going to be a reference to props.label. Let's see. Continuing to look through here, type is text, that's fine. Form control, placeholder. So we can have our placeholder and then our help. Okay, so those are the last two things it looks like. So we have maybe a pub placeholder. We can have this be an option. And then the option could, like, we can grab it off of the help, which will be less optional. So this can be an option with a string inside, just in case we don't need it. And a pub. This is going to be maybe like a description, which is a description is going to be a non-optional string. And then here we go. Placeholder. Okay, so if this is optional, we can unwrap or default this. So we'll do a this is going to be a props dot placeholder dot unwrap or default, which should be an empty string. And then, I can't move out, so that's why I have to constantly use clone when I'm inside of these. Okay, and then here for our enter task help, this is going to be the placeholder. So props dot placeholder, and then it's always so weird to me that that with these ones, instead of having to clone it in, as long as it's a string or something that it can figure out the display, I can just pass in a reference to it. Oh wait, no, not placeholder, description. There you go. That makes that happy. Okay, placeholder. Why are you upset? Field is never read. Really? You're never read? But you're right there. It feels like I'm reading it. Okay. I sort of a little bit confused by that messaging. Oh, there's one more thing, which is this this ID. I don't want it to be just like task title help, because that might duplicate the IDs. So we need to create a new one. So we're gonna do a let help ID equals. We're gonna create a format thing here. I always want to I'm always trying to remind myself to use just like to grab information and just put it directly inside of here, but I don't think it's gonna work. So we're gonna do dash help, and here we're gonna use a reference to props.id. That's gonna give us a new string that has basically whatever is passed in as the ID with a dash help. So we can now use that here. So that will be our help ID, and you will be described by the help ID. We do have to clone this one, so that way we don't take ownership of it over there. All right. You are relatively happy. Let's go ahead and now use this. So do a use text form field, text form field, text form field. We can actually just see the things that we want to pull in here. So you go back one, and you all come up here. All right, let's start by getting rid of these pubs. I will go there. Okay, so first of all, what is our ID going to be? Well, for this is our task, the task title. So I'll just call this task title. Our label. So what is this going to, display? So just title. Our placeholder. So that'll be something like the pick up groceries. And then the description, which would be create a new task title. Then I need to not forget to close this. So we will do a self-closing tag there. And now we have our text form field here. that should be happy, and everything should be exactly the same. And if we go and, oh, now you're yelling at me that it can't load this SAS file. Oh, was it because I was picking up that? It does seem to be working still. So if we go and inspect it, here is our, we have that column, we have our label and input. That span is here, and we're ignoring it and not having it display. Now we could potentially change that. Like you can add some logic in to maybe add or remove that class in case you do want the help to display. And those are things that we can do inside of that that component, and then just expose via a property. Anyways, this is what I wanted to show of how we can integrate Bootstrap into our projects, and then just start working away with a nicer CSS from the get-go. Caveats to know with Bootstrap, because there are these CSS classes, you do tend to spread them all throughout your project, which can make switching to a different framework a little bit more difficult. So keeping everything into like various components that are in certain places in your application can be really helpful. But as you saw with the grid system, that becomes really hard to do really quickly. Also, CSS component frameworks don't really work nicely together, so be extremely careful if you want to mix them together and have multiple there. You'll notice that there's really not much namespacing going on with Bootstrap. You have container. If any other CSS framework uses that same one, you're going to end up getting collisions. Then finally, notice that there's a liberal amount of importance that are added on to these classes here, which I am not thrilled with. This is like the main thing that I dislike about using something like Bootstrap. I've also seen this in many other CSS frameworks, so it's not, I can't only blame them. And this would be my main reasons of potentially not using them. Because this makes it really hard for me to override by creating my own styles or my own style sheet to sort of like add on to it. Anyways, this has been basically adding in Bootstrap to our projects. Hopefully it was helpful. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in another video. Bye. All right. Let's see. Bullfirst ad, hello. Sorry, I couldn't say hello while I was recording that. Stacking, thank you so much for the reminder to fix that, to change the div for line 23. I did see that and I got that. EKS, hello. I saw your thing and I tried to like fit in the description and the explanation in there, so hopefully you saw that. And yes, that probably was an RLS start. That was like really weird for like to show to basically say like, hey, that's not required, but like there was no red squiggly or yellow squiggly on the file. So yeah, interesting. Oh, don't worry about that. Like if I was really bothered by it, I would be just recording these offline. But I kind of have this idea that even if the courses are paid, I record them on Twitch, and so that way people can. There's always like a pathway to consume the content without paying, but there's a price for it, right? Like there's a price of like now time. You have to like actually be here at the time, or like see it within X days or weeks that it's up on Twitch. I'm gonna call the system free to learn. I wonder, does that actually exist? It's probably a terrible thing, because free to play is. Okay, so I think We're about done here for that. So looking at our checklist, got all these things done. What? Why you do that? I have to like click and wait for several seconds. What are they doing? How did they manage to like make this? Okay. Okay, if I network. Did you see that pause? I don't know if you can see the actual like events that went out, but they paused for like a good second before doing another query to get the state, and that's when we see that it checks. That's something weird that they're doing. It looks like they're grabbing the entire state in JSON object. That's I'm not super thrilled about that. But okay, so our video is done. Our recording has been made. I do want to, before I forget, rename the OBS recording for that. This is going to be Bootstrap CSS. All right, and I'll throw that into, I'll upload that off. Well, it has to be tomorrow at the very earliest. So upload video, that'll happen. So now this can only work off stream. Great. That was my only sort of like the plan for today, and I don't really have that much time to do anything else anyways. We do have a few minutes before I would have to leave. Do any of you have any questions about like the courses, Rust, Yew, web development? I'll be happy to answer those while I sort of finish up doing things here. So you're gonna go into Laman, hello. I assume that's an L and not an I. Any thoughts on Tailwind? So we did try Tailwind, and I'm gonna do like a lesson on it also to like integrate Tailwind. I think that I like it. It's basically gonna be a lighter weight, easier to customize Bootstrap. So basically, it's just gonna be the helper classes, and that's it. So I kind of like the idea of using it as like a global style sheet that can be shared across different projects. And then if you combine that with I guess you can combine that with a component library that just makes things a little bit easier. Or maybe you don't even need a component library anymore. That being said, with Rust, especially because of WebAssembly, you can't use all the features of like the CLI, which is a little bit unfortunate. So you can't have it like auto generate the project or figure everything else out on an existing project. It's just not going to work. It can't read the WebAssembly. That's how you feel about it. Useful to get a decent looking site fast. Yeah, I really like that too. Plus also because it exposes just a single CSS file for yourself, you could then throw that onto a CDN and make that available for everything else, which is always really nice. Okay, so I've got that. I'm gonna come back down here. Let's close all of these off. There, we'll open you up. And so here's this Bootstrap CSS. So when I upload this, I will then also at the end add in the link to the YouTube video when it goes on there. So we have HTML code embedded into Rust code. Is there a way to keep the components in dedicated HTML files? So yes, from what I can tell, it is technically possible to have a separate HTML file and import the HTML and then use that. That being said, we lose any dynamic abilities from that. So think about what we can do with React, because that's kind of like where a lot of things like we're modeling from. So in React, if you have a list of things and you want to create like a whole bunch of components all at once, you would probably need to, inside of here, do like a for blah in, blahs. And then you can have it like return this thing. You can do like a for each. There's lots of options there. You lose that if this is going to be a separate, just a separate static file, because it's not going to execute that code in the same way that it would here. So while technically possible, even with the CSS, where like, oh man, it would be nice to have CSS separately so I can have help from the browser. There's too many times when I want to grab information like from a variable and then insert it in, which is not like, I would need to write my own templating like library on top of it, which we already have a templating system here. Might as well just use theirs and like bite the bullet with help for it. So does that answer your question? Basically, it's I would say like the real problem is getting browsers to really work with HTML in the same way that browsers are IDEs to work with, that they work with JSX. Like if they can recognize that this is really HTML and have an HTML engine work with this, then that would be amazing. That would be great. All right, so I think we're good there. All right, so don't really have anything else to do, so unless there's any other questions, I think we're gonna set up a raid. I'm thinking about raiding Togglebit. So Togglebit has raided us many times in the past. He does a lot of Rust development, a lot of really interesting stuff. Lately, he's been building a terminal UI system, which actually should be really fast, because a lot of them in the past traditionally have been really slow. So it's going to be really interesting to see when we get to that point. I should actually switch over and start watching Togglebit too, so I can react to all that stuff. I just need to go to twitch.tv. I need to hurry before it just does the raid. Anyways, I will be back tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. Mountain Time, and we'll continue on and doing something. I don't know exactly what yet. I'll figure that out. So with that, thank you so much for hanging out with me today, and I will see you next time. Bye.